So this is a story time about my mom sleeping with my crush. So my brother was on this football team in my local town, and one of his friends on the team was so cute, and I instantly had a thing for him. On top of that, we just vibed really, really well. I would also like you guys to keep in mind that my mom is the manager of their football team. Anyways, we started talking and everything was going pretty well. That is, until my 18th birthday. He kissed me, and then he kissed my best friend right in front of me, which really upset me. I just ended up leaving and going to bed, but he ended up staying. I got this weird suspicion that maybe this wasn't the first time, and I was finding little clues along the house too. So that's when I decided to be a super sleuth and, well, I checked some of his text messages. And that's when I found messages between him and my mom. Share, follow, and add me on Instagram, and I'll tell you guys what happened next. Hey guys, and welcome back to part 2 of my mom sleeping with my crush. So, reading the text messages, it was beyond obvious. My mom was aware that I had a crush on him too. I had told her on multiple occasions, and she even knew that we were talking. I knew that I was gonna have to confront her because this was so beyond messed up. She even knew that he had kissed me. So I sat down to confront her, and do you guys know what she did? She straight up denied it. Like, I saw the text messages and everything, but for some reason she just couldn't own up to it. And it's not like she just denied it once, like she denied it for months. Months after though, she eventually came clean. The moral of the story is that parents can be toxic too, so learn how to become better than them. So this is the story about how I met my wife. It all started out when I was dating this guy for about 10 months, when I found out that I was pregnant with his baby. We can call this guy Lucas for this story. Well, not too long after this, my roommate actually saw Lucas with another girl. I was completely stunned, but my roommate did some research and found this girl on Instagram. I decided to reach out to her through DM, and we ended up meeting up for coffee. During this, I found out that they had been in a relationship for 7 years, and not only that, they had a 5-year-old together. Also, for this story, we'll call her Lily. So Lucas had told Lily and I that he was over at his friend's house today. We knew that we were going to have to go there to confront him, so that's what we did. The second we got there, he was mortified, as he should be. And his friend ended up even taking our side and kicking him out of the house. What happens next makes this story absolutely amazing, so if you want to hear it, like, follow, share, and add me on Instagram. Hi guys, and welcome back to part 2 of finding my wife. So not too long after this, it was getting pretty close to me having my baby. And with going into this phase of life, being a single mom, my parents really disapproved. My relationship with them got so toxic that I had to move out. So Lily invited me to live with her. We got along so well, and it was almost like we were both raising her 5-year-old together. And then we ended up catching feelings for each other. So we started to date and then eventually got married. It's honestly so crazy thinking that someone cheated on the two of us and it ended up bringing us together. Now we're raising an adorable little family. This is probably one of my favorite stories from a follower, so if you have a story, please follow me and DM me on Instagram. Hey guys, so to start off spooky season, I'm going to tell you about the case of Lizzie Borden. A lot of you guys probably know about this case due to the nursery rhyme, but not a lot of people actually know how this ends. This case takes place in Fall River, Massachusetts. Lizzie was born on July 19th, 1860. She was born into a very wealthy family. Her father was said to be worth about $10 to $15 million of today's money, which would have been insane back then. He was extremely frugal, which bothered Lizzie and her siblings. While she was overall a really good student and was very active in the church, she was known to be a bit of a kleptomaniac. Like, she would steal things pretty often, and her father would just cover the charges for her. Her main concern was her stepmom. She talked publicly to the community about how much she hated her. Then one night while their uncle was visiting them for dinner, Lizzie actually ran to the neighbor's house to let her know that her father had been murdered. And the murder was brutal. He had about 11 blows from an axe to his body. Upstairs, they found the stepmom. She was in even worse condition. Clearly, the vendetta was personal. Follow, share, and add me on Instagram for part 2. Hey guys, and welcome back for part 2 of the Lizzie Borden case. The investigation started almost immediately. Considering that there was no blood found on Lizzie at the time of the murder, they really didn't suspect her. They truly believed that it was some outside crazed killer that had just broken into the house. However, once the investigation started, no one in the community had said that they had seen anyone hanging around the house or lurking. That's when the police started to believe that it was someone on the inside, so they turned to Lizzie Borden. Some of the evidence started to add up against her. They found a handleless hatchet in the attic, which seemed to have had its handle moved on purpose, and there was a layer of ash around it as if it was burnt. She was also caught burning one of her dresses. She claimed it was because there was a little bit of paint on it, and she had been trying to purchase chloroform. When the court case started, it was extremely inconsistent. She often wouldn't answer things that would have helped her case. However, there was no feasible evidence to show that she had committed the crime. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury declared her not guilty. The entire courtroom erupted in cheers. A lot of people were on her side at the time. She changed her name and moved away. Follow and share if you want more stories. Sometimes things aren't always as they seem. On the 11th of March in 2011, a Lululemon manager came in for her shift in the morning when she noticed the store was unlocked. Frightened, she went to the line at the Apple store and asked a guy who had been standing in the line for a couple of hours if he had seen anything. He said that he had seen nothing, but he offered to walk into the Lululemon with her. As they walked in, it looked as though there was a robbery. Receipts everywhere and cash registers open. However, the closer that they got to the back, the more things seemed out of place. And then they saw one bloody footprint after another. When she finally got to the back, she found her coworkers who had shifts the night before. They were covered in blood and completely unresponsive. She thought they were both dead. The police and ambulances arrived immediately. One of the girls in the back, named Jana Murray, sustained 331 wounds. This was done between 5 different weapons. This killing obviously seemed personal. They went to go attend to the other girl, Brittany Norwood, and they noticed that she was still breathing. She was tied up by zip ties and had superficial wounds all over her body. Follow, share, and add me on Instagram for part 2. So this is part 2 to the Lululemon murderer. After one murder and an attempted murder, the police had to take action immediately. They started interviewing so many people that were around the Lululemon at the time and Brittany Norwood herself. Also took note at the state of the place when they found it. The alarm was turned off with a key, the tools were out everywhere, and the size of the footprint was a US 14 shoe, which is fairly big. The story was that 2 masked men broke in, beat, and assaulted the 2 girls. Police looked for weeks for 2 men that fit their description to walk by. When they finally found men that fit the description, they interrogated them and found no proof. They did find that the randomness of such a cruel act was really odd, so they went back from the beginning and interviewed Brittany again. This time, her story wasn't adding up. Once eyes turned to Brittany, a whole history of hers popped up, specifically a history of stealing things. Recently, Jana had accused Brittany of attempting to steal a pair of yoga pants, so the police found their motive. My Instagram is below, part 3 will be next. Hey guys, and welcome back for part 3 of the Lululemon murderer. The store manager that had found them specifically found everything to be odd, considering that she actually had called Jana after she had locked up the store the night before and was leaving on her way home. So why did she go back? Brittany had actually called her and stated that she had left her Metro card inside of the Lululemon, so Jana came back to let her in. The moment that Jana walked in, Brittany confronted her for going to management after she saw her steal the leggings. The argument turned to a brutal attack. Then Brittany staged the scene to look like they had both been attacked and assaulted. Then she put on a pair of size 14 shoes and left a trail of bloody footprints to make it appear as though a large man had been there. She put the superficial wounds on herself and bound her own ankles and wrists. While the police originally believed the story of the masked intruders, it did not take long for them to see through the lies. She was now the sole suspect. A nearby store then reported that they heard 2 women arguing the night of the murder. That's when they knew for sure that they had the right person. In January of 2012, Brittany was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole.
Story time about why I beat up my best friend. So a little background information. Her and I had been best friends since we were in 7th grade. Her family was rich, mine was poor, and at first she was a really good friend. She was always there for me whenever I needed her, until our freshman year of high school, which is when her and I started hanging out with boys. Now, my mom was kind of strict. She wouldn't really let me hang out with boys, but her mom was more lenient about her hanging out with boys. Every weekend she would throw a party at her house, and she would throw them in her attic because 1, it was huge, and 2, her parents didn't give a fuck what she did up there. Anyways, she would always offer to do my hair and makeup before the party started, which always made me really excited because I never really put any work into my physical appearance. Well, little did I know, the only reason why she would offer to do my hair and makeup at these parties was so that way she could make me look like shit in front of all the boys. So after that, I taught myself how to do my own makeup and do my own hair, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I beat up my best friend. So like I said, I learned how to do my hair and makeup, and she went on vacation for like a month straight. Well, when she came home, she threw another party, and she was like, don't worry, after I'm done getting ready, I'll do your makeup and do your hair. And I was like, no, it's fine, I got it. She literally looks at me and she goes, are you sure? You don't really know how to do that. Like, it'll probably look really bad. And I'm like, why the fuck would you say that? She goes, no, like, I don't mean it to be rude. It's just that, like, I want you to look good in front of the boys and stuff like that. Like, sis tried to talk me into getting a shower for a full, like, 20 minutes. So after that, the whole night, she's literally being a pick-me girl. She's making all these comments about me in front of the boys, and I just keep brushing them off until her next party. We got ready, and I put on these expensive shoes that I had just bought, and she goes, wow, you just, like, really like to copy my style, don't you? So she starts making comments that whole night about how my family's poor and stuff like that, and she threw up all over my shoes. So I dumped the trash can that everybody had threw up in that night on her, punched her in the face, but like 2 months later, she came to my house and apologized. Story time about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So a little background information. This had all started as soon as my dad left my mom and I. I was like 13 around the time. Well, ever since then, my mom would have different guys in and out of the house all the time. Like, we were lucky if a month went by and she was still with the same dude. Which, I mean, I kind of get it because my dad did leave us for a woman that he had started another family with. But at the same time, it was just a whole mess. Anyway, so she had got with this new guy and we're gonna call him Tyler. And by the way, the dudes that she would date, they would literally live at our house. Anyway, so a week after he moved in, I started getting really close to him, which usually never happens. Usually I would try to keep my distance because I knew how wrong it was of her having all these different guys in the house when I'm only 16. Anyways, every time that my mom would go to work, he would invite me to go see a movie and he would just be really flirty with me. And he was only 6 years older than me. And my mom was 32. You do the math. Anyways, like for part 2. Part 2 about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So like I said, the guy was being super flirty with me, inviting me to the movies when my mom wasn't home and all that stuff. Well, then it led to more than just that. By the way, this guy did not have a job, so he was home with me 24/7. And I was doing online school. So we were in the house by ourselves, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. Anyways, like I said, it led to more and we started doing the nasty and stuff. Ew, just, yeah. Well, the one day after we got done doing the nasty in my mom's room, we had fell asleep. And yes, we did not have clothes on. Well, at 2 in the morning, I hear someone pounding on the bedroom door. And my mom worked night shifts. So we get up, he hurries up and gets dressed and tells me to hide under the bed. And he opens the door and it's my mom's sister. My sister literally lived in the apartment next door. And she was like, oh yeah, neither of you were answering the phone. So she wanted me to check on you guys. Like, where's Elena? And I'm still under the bed naked, like for part 3. Part 3 about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So like I said, I'm laying under the bed, no clothes on. She asks where I am. And he's like, oh, she should be in her room. So he goes looking for me everywhere with her. And he's like, oh, well, maybe she's outside on the patio. And I don't know why the hell my mom's sister had a key to our apartment anyways. But she's still looking for me in the apartment and she looks under the fucking bed. And at first she's like, oh my god, what did he do to you? And I'm trying to tell her nothing, like I made that decision on my own. So she calls my mom right away. My mom comes home, she's screaming at me and she kicks me out. So I go to my grandma's house and I told my grandma what happened. And my grandma calls her and she's like, it's not her fault that you gave her daddy issues. And I'm like, bruh, what the fuck? Child, anyways. So then she goes on Facebook and starts posting about how I'm a whore and a slut and how, like, it isn't her boyfriend's fault at all. So now I live